Everyone, and welcome to Into the Outer Realms, but more specifically, Craig and Joey's Sinister Mysteries. This is episode 155 of Into the Outer Realms, but good sir, it is our number. That's right,
11.
goalposts.
Yeah, I mean, I could go 10, 10, 1. Right? That's very
Good one, 551. That sounds good. The 551 tonight, and
yes.
I'm
Roman
really
numeral.
loving. We've done enough of these now that we're really starting to paint a picture, starting to paint a tapestry. You guys are going to hear about Kissinger and Nixon again that you heard about in a different segment while they were ramping up Operation Condor, which you and I talked about 2 weeks ago. They were also getting involved in this whole crazy thing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. I mean, that's one of the things. Just like when this was unintended, too, which is even better, is how we came up with some of these topics, and then they ended up working almost chronologically, like how they're falling in. It's like, and this was simply for a little inside baseball for everybody. This was simply a list of different topics that sounded fascinating that I shot over to Joey, and I'm just like, "What do you think of these?" And they actually ended up working together. I mean, who'd have thought cults would mix in with it? Operation, and then you get into Air America. It's pretty cool.
It's absolutely right, and it just shows you how all of this is interconnected. It's of a piece, and we we're going back in time a little, which is good. But after the show, Craig and I are going to talk about upcoming dates, upcoming topics. Please let us know in the comments if there's a sinister mystery that you really want us to take a look at.
That's a great thing. Yeah, you've got something that you would like to see us engage. Shoot it out there. I mean, what's the worst we're going to tell you? No. Most likely we're going to take it.
The only reason I would see is if it just doesn't fit the criteria. But
so I mean, what's the worst we're going to say? No, it's not that bad.
So this was a long, cold open. Let's roll the intro. We're going to come back and we're going to get right into Air America. Don't believe everything you saw in the Mel Gibson, Robert Downey Jr. movie. Here it comes. Okay, man.
I know I did that last show too.
Technical difficulty. There exists a realm beyond our wildest dreams, a realm beyond reality that the gatekeepers and guardians have always told us consists of nothing but tricks of the eye, weather balloons, swamp gas, sand cranes, fairy tale myths of monsters, crackpot conspiracy theories, and desperate cries for attention.
We know this realm exists, and it's just beyond the horizon. The preset path, the well-worn walkways where the cynics want us to stay.
Instead, give this a listen. Put on your headphones, adjust your volume, close your eyes, and fasten your mental seatbelts, because the twilight-tinged turnoff from reality's alluring highway is looming just ahead.
We're about to leave the plane of the easily explained, couldn't possibly be's, and the no way I just saw what I saw's, for the spaces and places where everything is possible, and if you stay long enough, even probable. We're about to take a journey into the outer realms. All right, welcome back. So let's dive right in. I'm just going to start real quick. Folks, this is a world-famous photo of a helicopter evacuating civilian and diplomatic staff from the USMB rooftop in Saigon in April 1975. I believe it ran in like Life magazine, things. It was iconic because it was the end of the Vietnam War. That helicopter was an Air America helicopter. Pretty neat. It was captured in this moment of history. So, Craig, you wanna set us up? What, the who, what, where?
We could go. I mean, it's just, Air America. We are coming to how this started. It was founded as Civil Air Transport by I'm going to butcher their names just because I don't know the exact pronunciation, but Claire Chenault and Whiting Willauer, I think is how you say it. Is how you say it. We're just going to go with it, even if it's not.
Yeah.
In 1946, the mission for this group was to airlift supplies and food into China. That was just coming out of World War II. So they had just gone through, which you saw that on our previous one with the see the synchronicity in this. So it comes through. They just went through all the chaos and hell with Japan from World War II, and now Mao Zedong was forming the Communist Party. He was actually, so now we're getting into the conflict with, I think it's Chiang Kai-shek, and so that group that was, so yeah, the two were, so now we're having this fight. So now they find themselves, they founded themselves with former aviators from a combat flying group known as the Flying Tigers that Chenault was in charge of. So what they did, now they're doing, like I said, airlifting supplies, food supplies. They're starting this. Well, then the war turns, and this, I think they call it is it the Indochina War? Is that what that second one? Yep. Is that what they referred to that? Yep. So what they do is now the former government is pushed into Taiwan. So now CAT, Civil Air Transport, finds themselves stuck on Taiwan, and pretty much their business is gone. They're trying to find something to do. So they're just hanging. They're doing little side projects in here. So about that was when 1950, they go up to here. They're really not finding steady work. They're just barely treading water. And that's when the miraculous savior of the alphabet soup comes rolling in 1950. The CIA shows up and says, you know what? We will take this off your hands. And so they purchase CAT, and they begin to operate this up until 1959 as the Civil Air Transport. And in 1959 is when they changed the name to Air America. And then just like a brief summary. So what that is, once they turn to Air America, that's when things, depending on, they take a more geopolitical turn, more sinister turn. We'll get into these things, but that's when this goes from just a simple supply missions to supply missions, which will incorporate everybody, Nixon, Kissinger, and all that coming up. And back to you.
That's right. That was nice. So really, all I want to say is, folks, you'll know the Flying Tigers because it's that red mouth with the white teeth. It was actually quite famous. One of the members of the Flying Tigers created a trucking company. So you might have seen their trucks too. But of course, the tiger associated with China. And that's where that came from. It's really, I think, Craig, rather than facts and figures, which I usually do, I want to talk about the broad strokes. It goes back to one of the last things that we said with Operation Condor. United States foreign policy is the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Yep. So the United States, that's where they seize an opportunity. So here's China. There is this nationalist insurgent group, which is General Chiang Kai-shek. And they're like, okay, well, if Kai-shek gets in charge, maybe we can stem this red tide, this communist tide. So we have to throw resources at it. But the United States, as you're going to see over the course of the show tonight, likes to do things behind the scenes as much as possible. So you get a guy like Chenault, you get a guy like Willauer. They want to make a buck. War profiteering is a thing. Craig, I knew a dude during Vietnam who was stationed in Paris and was selling gasoline out of the motor pool on the black market, an American.
Oh my God.
Selling right? And so this kind of thing is a thing. And they built it up and things were going great guns until they weren't anymore. And then you get
and then this right above us, it's kind of cool how the banner does. This is literally the way, when we touch it, we're going to touch on these things, and you're going to find that they really hit to this thing. Anything, anywhere, anytime, and professionally. Now, the professional one, that may come into play here and there, but it's definitely those first three you're going to see throughout the show that they literally were going to do anything, anywhere, and anytime.
And they were going to do it professionally. And here's why. And this is why I say, like, I bought the DVD. I didn't get a chance to watch it last night. I was with my family. But I am going to watch the Mel Gibson, Robert Downey Jr. movie from 1990. But they're eating ham sandwiches and they're being cowboys and all of this kind of stuff. I see some new faces in the chat room. So welcome, everyone. I'm glad you found us. I really want to impress that lives were lost. Planes were lost. The planes they flew weren't always up to snuff. This was dangerous stuff. These guys were doing really, really crazy stuff, and they were believing in what they were doing. They had to. They definitely had to. So, Craig, before we get into the 1950s, we are in the 1950s. But the Korean War, right? Let's talk about the Korean War, because these guys were everywhere. Every major conflict post World War II.
Yeah, I some of my notes, like I said, I'll show them up here for people so they can see. My color coding system here. Yeah, typically they flew cargo from Republic of Vietnam, the Kingdom of Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, Taiwan, Japan, Korea to some point. But what they did is a lot of these were former military pilots. These weren't just Bob from just decides I want to fly a plane today. These guys, they combat missions, because as we get into this, that is going to become pretty much a key factor because some of these guys, apologize my language. You've got to have balls.
Oh, yeah.
To do these missions, because this isn't just flying into suburbia and, hey, what's going on? No, I mean, a lot of these, you talked about Air America, the movie. Most of your research, when you type in that's what you're going to come across. When they show it was Hollywoodized, but it was literally that thing. They're flying in under fire. Anti-aircraft they're being shot at. Most of these planes, bullet holes, just different stuff, just all across the board. I mean, it was pretty amazing that they didn't have a higher casualty rate than they did.
Right.
And I mean, they had guys captured. They had and that was part of the mission. Some of their missions were to rescue their fellow pilots.
Yeah.
That went down.
Yeah. So it's short runways, uneven terrain, guerrilla conditions. These aren't clean runways where you're going in. And also the heaviness of the plausible deniability that if you get caught out, this is a secret mission after a certain point. You're in enemy territory where you don't belong. You're breaking, all kinds of treaties and agreements that had sprung up after World War II. That's a heavy load to carry.
Yeah, dog tags.
The heavy load.
Yeah, you weren't able to carry dog tags. You weren't able to carry, like I said, it was that type of stuff. And you basically were going in as John Does.
Right.
I mean, you crossed into the border of Vietnam, hey, Bob, I hope we see you on the other side.
Right. And there's a certain country that we haven't talked to yet, which is a specialty of mine for a couple different reasons that we'll get to. So the CIA comes in, they buy everything from Chino, and then things are really on. They got some pushback from MacArthur. He didn't like this. This wasn't by the books. MacArthur gets overruled, right? They say, too bad. This is going to happen anyway. And then they start working directly with CIA field officers. This, to me, Craig, was really the change, because these field officers from the CIA, they were all scattered through South America, of course, Southeast Asia, and these guys were directing operations on the ground. It's not like they really had a direct line to home. It's like, here you are, you're out there, you're in charge, make crap happen. And so it gets that way. One guy in particular is named Al Cox. This guy is a paratrooper. He runs paratroopers. They're paratrooping into occupied Germany, trying to help the French resistance. And these are the guys that Craig was talking about. These are veterans who have seen some stuff. These are hardcore guys. And So they're still doing, it's interesting. For a really long time, they're a commercial airline, but they're also a logistics organization. This kind of goes through the Korean War, but then they get special cargo. Then they start inserting CIA agents. Then next thing you know, they're inserting insurgents, and it all sort of goes. But the CIA is giving them really cool toys. They're giving them for airplane buffs. They're giving them C-119s, which are like sort of like the modern gunship counterinsurgency planes. So oftentimes, Craig, you see like the Piper Cubs, you see the smaller planes.
The fixed, you get those fixed wing one, the ones I got. Yeah, that's majority of the stuff. Like mostly like the Bush pilots. I mean, but they had some. There was a couple. The movie showed it, like the poster. They had some pretty large aircraft that they flew too.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it was like Hollywood that they could bank that kind of craft really quick under fire and land. I don't think it was that way, but that would have made for a boring movie if you hadn't had those shots.
Yeah, exactly. And you keep that in mind. And it's a fun role, but they're buying these Convair 880s. They're spending millions of dollars by 1958. And that Convair 880 again for plane buffs, it was called the Mandarin Jet. And it was a very big deal. It was inaugurated by the wife of General Kai-shek. So, as long as he's happy. But then, Craig, I remember sending you some texts somewhere along the line about when Jimmy Carter was in office, we really needed Pakistan as a staging base for the CIA to keep an eye on enemies. And the Pakistani president started dictating terms. And Kai-shek was also starting to dictate terms. You're going to go in here. You're going to do these things. So Chennault and Wilhour are starting to lose control a little. Would you agree?
Yeah, that was pretty much it. I think that probably led to the sale. Yeah. As well. It's that they were. Let's be honest. Pretty much once you became a de facto arm of the disposed Chinese government in Taiwan, you're pretty much beholden at that point.
Yeah.
They're the ones that are basically, they've kept you alive. They're the ones that you're going through this, you're at their mercy. And now you've lost the ability to basically dictate your own terms.
That's right.
And I would agree that that's probably a big reason why, they finally just said, done.
Yeah. So the CIA, as the CIA does with their front organizations and their things like the School of the Americas, like Craig said, they change it to Air America. Hey, that sounds cool. It's got a nice ring to it. And it's sort of game on. Part of the reason I found in my research that they changed the name was that the Japanese tax authorities were starting to look at this and going, what's coming in and out of here? What's going on? And what kind of money do you owe us?
Do you want me to get into like the operations?
Yeah, why don't you?
So I'll start with everybody. Everybody pretty much our age or a little older will remember a couple of quotes. You might have read. It was from President Richard Nixon. There are no American ground combat troops in Laos. We have no plans for introducing ground combat forces into Laos. These are direct quotes from President Nixon. All right. So 1959 to 1962, Air America is providing direct and indirect support to U.S. Special Forces in these areas under the names of Operation Ambidextrous, Operation Hotfoot, and Operation White Star. These ones they are code names for these secret training operations that the U.S. was doing in Laos to support the Kingdom of Laos in its fight against communism. So once again, just like Operation Condor, Kissinger, all these ones, we are arming the opposition to communism, so we're support here. So this one, they do this. So then after 1962, Project 404 is brought on, and this is responsible for many of the U.S. Army and Air Force attaches that are brought into now. It was known then, I think, the French name, I think it's Vientiane. I think French is terrible. It's now known as Vientiane. It's in Laos through the U.S. Embassy. And so, just like the president said, we have no plans for introducing ground forces. U.S. Special Forces is on the ground.
Oh yeah.
So it's determined, just right there. It's a lie. I mean, it's just, and so when you see these things through these operations, Air America is directly in, as we'll get into it, they're bringing the people in, they're bringing the people out. There's cargo that's going with them. There's cargo that's going out. They're being used. Now, the CIA is doing aerial surveillance. They're doing all these things in the process of moving these people. So, I mean, this Air America becomes a major spy operation, not just flying cargo or something. I mean, they're a military transport and a spy, aerial spy operate, and moving, basically cloak and dagger stuff in and out of, that at that time, the Asian Peninsula, which is, it's pretty ballsy. I mean, you're going into war-torn area. I mean, we can go on whether or not you agree with us, but I mean, just the fact that these pilots were willing to fly in direct fire just for the fact that you could get this special forces guy, drop him off in the middle of nowhere, and then fly back out. I mean, man, it makes some of those Alaskan bush pilots seem weak.
I agree. This is one of these cases where we have to really separate the personnel from the people running the personnel. Absolutely right. My dad, I think I can talk about this now. My dad was a cryptographer in the Naval Security Group, and he was in country way the hell before. He was part of a Marine expeditionary force. And then after his exposure to Agent Orange, all those records had to come out in order to prove that he was there, a Navy guy. But he had an incident where he was wounded and they lied about where he was to his parents and all that kind of thing. So the stakes were super, super high. I want to back up, Craig, just real quick. The Chinese communists started to get over. So it starts to shift. Remember that this organization is started to help Kai-shek, but the communists are getting a foothold. So they invade Tibet in October of 1950. What's interesting is during the research, I didn't know that Air America had their target everywhere. I mean, they're taking Dalai Lama back and forth between Tibet and India. I mean, that's precious, precious cargo. They're dealing with the Dalai Lama's brother, which I didn't even know that the Dalai Lama had a brother. So I learned so much in all of this. They're dealing with them. Of course, the Tibetans are getting slaughtered. The Chinese come in. They totally clamp down and put a foothold. They eradicate religion. Everything has to be secular. And the Dalai Lama almost doesn't get out. And I believe that Air America was involved with getting him out of the country, because that would have been a much, much different story. Then by 57, I just brought up the Pakistani president. The Pakistani president is getting involved because we have to move through East Pakistan to get these Tibetan monks out of the country. So he's dealing directly with a CIA case officer, the president of Pakistan.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
Yeah, so there are deaths. Tibetan freedom fighters are dying. Some of our pilots are dying. A converted B-17 is used to drop Tibetans. And that thing was so bad they used it for one mission and then they parked it for spare parts. So by this time, the CIA has 11 different kind of aircraft, helicopters, all different kinds of planes. But this isn't the cream and crop of the Army and Air Force. Like, no way.
Yeah.
Like what we were talking. So I don't want to beat that to death. But their guerrilla fighters are being trained on Saipan by the CIA. Then Air America is putting them in country to do their thing. They're finding ways to strip weight, right, from the C-130s so that they can get more cargo, so they can get more insurgents on them. So now you're in a flying gas can, which is already, speculative if it's even going to make anything happen. Then they start supplying guerrillas with ground drops, and that takes us, my friend, to Cuba.
Yeah, go for that one. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. So of course everybody knows about the Bay of Pigs. Air America has a subsidiary company, of course. The CIA loves all that kind of crap. It's called Air Asia, and they got 4 C-46s. So this is what they're doing here. They're delivering airstrips in Guatemala by 1960. This is the time, remember, Batista, the puppet of the United States, has been driven out of Cuba. Fidel is engaging in this war, and he winds up winning it. Winds up winning this guerrilla war in the mountains of Cuba with Camille Cienfuego and Che Guevara and the whole bit here. So Kennedy is pissed. He's steaming. This is not good. You have a potential communist country right off the coast. Craig, last time I talked about the fact that Eisenhower didn't want to meet with him, so he had Nixon meet with him. He gives a terrible report about Castro. I believe that Castro wanted to deal with the United States. He went to New York in 1959. A very big deal was made. But when the U.S. said, hell no, we're not dealing with you. You're a psycho. What you did was wrong. The mafia's pissed off. Everybody's pissed off. That's when they turned to Russia. So now they have a problem on their hands here. So the Bay of Pigs is concocted, right? Allen Dulles, the CIA, all this business. It ties into the potential Kennedy assassination. Lee Harvey Oswald met a guy who had some experience with Air America called Barry Seal. I don't know if you came across Barry Seal in your research. Yeah, there's a movie with Tom Cruise called American Made about Barry Seal. I highly recommend it, although Barry Seal was like 300 pounds and he got muscular.
He was assassinated.
Yeah, he was. He got a bullet in the head. Yeah. Now he was sort of, we'll get to him because this is sort of like post Air America, how this continued under another name. But of course, we don't need a history lesson right now on Bay of Pigs. It's a total failure. Planes are crashing. They're getting shot down. They're being co-opted by the enemy. Supplies that are supposed to be dropped to these Gire de Playa is where Bay of Pigs comes from. So all these insurgents get dropped on the beach, you know, Cuban expats and all who've been in Miami and so forth. And the supplies are getting picked up by Castro's guys. It's a big mess. Allen Dulles gets fired over the whole thing. And his assistant, his last name, who was the point man in the CIA for the Air America operations, his last name was Cabo. You should know that name because the mayor of Dallas, we brought this up on the show before. The mayor of Dallas was his damn brother. The one who changed the route at the last minute, put Kennedy in a kill box in an open-topped car, is the brother of one of the guys that gets fired during this whole debacle. And Air America was a huge, huge part of it. As a matter of fact, I'll tell a quick story here, and then, Craig, I'll let you take over Vietnam and Laos. This plane lands in Miami. It's a B-26. And the pilot gets out and says, hey, I just defected from Cuba. I'm a Cuban. I have this B-26. We got this big fight going on. We need help. Everything's good. Castro's on the run. The country's falling apart. So the U.S. ambassador gets pushback from the foreign minister of Cuba, who goes, that is not our plane. This is a false flag. Knock it off. And the U.S. ambassador says, in point of fact, this is one of our planes. And he says, no. Cuban B-26s have plexiglass nose covers. As you can clearly see, this is a solid nose cover. Hence, it is not a Cuban plane. So as we were moving into the Cuban Missile Crisis, the U.S. had major egg on its face with these false flag operations. The whole thing.
You go back to the Spanish-American War.
Yeah.
You know, the boiler accident. Yeah, I mean, this was clearly something that you could see was a setup trying to move these pieces because the geopolitical thing, you know, you've got to move these, you got to get these things going to open up the avenues for other things. You know, it's almost, you almost need literally the red thread, you know, to connect all these dots, you know, and of course you're going to have people like Kissinger, his head's going to be right there and there's going to be, you know, interconnections everywhere.
Charles, my friend, help me out with the LHO. I'm not. Barry Seal was a TWA pilot who wound up with the CIA, had experience with Air America, was trained in the Civil Air Patrol, and wound up being one of the main couriers for the Medellin cartel. So Pablo Escobar and those guys.
Yeah,
who eventually killed him.
Yeah, one of the guys, like we'll get to later, is it's the same day. It's just like names. I'll get to you. Maybe you know how to say his last name. Was that this guy out of Scranton, Pennsylvania?
Oh,
yeah, Rick.
I deleted
Frederick Rick. Yeah, I brought that up just because I wanted to cover that because a lot of people, when they type in Air America, they're going to come across him.
Yeah.
And I'll get with how that one. Do you want me to jump into Vietnam and Laos?
In 1 second, let's address this with Charles. You're absolutely right. Legend and lore says that Lee Harvey Oswald and Barry Seal crossed paths. And Barry Seal was one of the ones that said that. But they were in the right time at the right place. I believe it was in Florida. So there could be that. Yeah, we'll talk about Barry Seal more at the back end. Air America was one of those things that got shut down, but didn't really get shut down. So, yeah, why don't you take us into Nam and Laos?
All right. So pretty much Air America started delving into the drug trade. If you go based off of what people say, CIA denies any and all things that they were ever directly doing it for the profit side, that they were the drug smugglers. They were transporting, and this is kind of where Pakistan comes in to play too, is because that area, Afghanistan, Pakistan, are huge opium producers.
That's right.
And opium was one of the things that was being used to fund the rebels. These, I shouldn't actually say the rebels. I'll say the Kingdom of Laos, because they were fighting the rebels. I want to say, I think it's Pathet Lao rebels who were aligned with the North Vietnamese. And this is where we tie into the Plain of Jars. This is an area that it became kind of, I don't know what you want to call it, Bunker Hill. I mean, it kind of became basically almost like Gettysburg type thing. It was just like this one where it's like a lot of battles were fought over this area. And this is in Laos. And this was a staging area where, through the support of Mao Chinese government, they were sending supplies and stuff for the North Vietnamese, and they were staging it in Laos. And through our support, the Laos forces took this over, got all the equipment stuff, but then they were defeated and the Vietnamese started staging stuff in there again. And this was just kind of like a de facto, battlefield for the stuff. And so Air America is running at this point drugs, transporting back and forth through support. So they've now delved into this. And so now this is kind of where it starts. And as you dive into this, through the research, it's hard because like I said, everybody denies it, but you can clearly see the pieces are moving. Somebody back at Langley was, hey, this is a great way to fund without being able to have government oversight. We don't have to answer to Congress, because now, and this is where people like that Frederick guy down the road in Barry Seal, this is where these guys are going to come into play, because now Operation Condor, you still have contacts there. There's a reason why these drug cartels are so successful, why they don't get just immediately shut down. You can't tell me the American military with all their satellites, we don't know exactly where, these cartels are sitting at. We can't, we're watching this stuff in real time. They're doing what we want them to do.
Yeah. They're
bringing this up. So the CIA has their hands in here. Now these guys are moving product from here to the cartels. The cartels are doing it. And occasionally you have one popped because it helps. You want to help this guy who's up and coming, and he's really gung-ho to support you. So you take out the guy who's starting to think, I might be able to get a better deal if I go here. Well, all of a sudden now he's sitting in a Midwest prison. Yeah. And so you see where this drug trade starts becoming a really big thing, because all these leaders start turning a blind eye to these Air America planes that are clearly hauling bundles, and they're not doing it for the sheer, kind of, in a way, it's like a major skimming off the top operation.
Oh yeah.
And, jumping ahead, you can pull the string and look, this is when the crack epidemic, cocaine really becomes prevalent in the US and stuff. Well, this is because the support from this Asian heroin, opium, this trade now filters into South America. Now they're able to find these partners who are able to move this product along with cocaine. And then through the piloting abilities, that's where you have guys like Barry Seal and these other guys that come into the picture.
Right. So as we've kind of organically started to do, you give the great broad strokes, which is awesome. I'm going to backtrack just a little and give just a little detail. These guys, as they're becoming more of a logistics service, like at the height of, or at the start of Vietnam and Laos, there are a couple of things that really, they're delivering ammunition. They're delivering tear gas that's being imported from Okinawa. So this is geopolitical mapping. We're getting stuff from these guys. We're getting stuff from these guys. Most people don't know any of this, which is why we do this on Thursday nights. They're helping the Navy SEALs, the Air America.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also a guy who becomes head of the CIA at a crucial time, William Kobe. He's a CIA station chief at the time. So these guys are cutting their teeth and then they're running it stateside after they're running all this clandestine crap, right? This secret war is what they call this. And what I read, Craig, I don't know if you found it, at the same time that they're doing medevac and that kind of thing, they're also one of the earliest people dropping napalm. Did you find that in your research?
I never saw the thing about them dropping napalm. And while you're describing it, I was thinking too, it's a little, sidetrack, but take out the space, space alien, and Predator is a great example of this type of operation. You have these groups that are flown into just a remote jungle operation, and you see the infrastructure they have set up on the beach as the helicopters land. And this is literally what Air America was doing in Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam. These things, they were running these type of operations. I mean, they would literally fly in with attaches, drop them off, and they're off to the next one. I mean, we're talking thousands of sorties that these pilots were flying in these, in about this, decade and a half, maybe 15, 16 years, maybe. I mean, and these guys, like 10,000 sorties. I mean, they're doing these. So, they're not just moving military equipment.
No. So I think it's my understanding. I think this is a good place before we get into deniability and pull Kissinger and Nixon into it. And I want to talk in a little more detail about how the whole drug thing started going and the real conflict of interest that it was on a lot of levels. This idea, I lost my train of thought. Charles says here, Christians in action. Have you ever heard that for the CIA?
No, I said that's a perfect. I like it because that's what they claim. If you ever talk to them, that's what they. Oh no, we're just moving humanitarian and like for a humanitarian operation. There's sure a lot of dead and stuff blown up.
Yeah. No, that's exactly it. I remembered what I wanted to say. A lot of the pilots maintain to this day as well that they didn't know. I was just, they loaded the plane. I was having a cigarette and a coffee outside the hangar. I just delivered the stuff. I didn't ask questions.
Yeah, they're the mob truck driver. You don't look.
Yeah.
They load up the truck. You drive the truck. If you get arrested, you're like, I don't know what's on the truck.
Yeah.
I was lighting my cigarette when they closed the door. I don't know what's going on.
Here's what the manifest says, man.
Yep.
That's it.
It says car parts. What's on
and I'm inclined to believe them. I think
majority of them. I think just like anything, there's going to be the people that I mean, it's like if you've flown enough missions, you're recognizing the same people that keep showing up, and you're like, that's not just some businessman that's that's loading trinkets onto your plane.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You take a little peek, maybe take a little sample, whatever. So, like Craig said earlier, Nixon and Kissinger are highly, highly involved in this, just like they were years later in 4 or 5 years later, it was Operation Condor. So they had a new toy to play with, these megalomaniacs. But the White House was regularly appraised of Air America flights and also incidents. And again, through freedom of information and the general trend toward declassification of some of these things, because of the time that's gone by, you can read some of these memos. But a memo was sent to Henry Kissinger detailing the loss of an Air America plane. So they were sharing warts and all with the situation room, so to speak. This plane went down. We lost this guy. We lost this shipment. This was going on. That was going on. There's a Kissinger memorandum that you can find from February of 1970, and it's on White House letterhead. Okay. And it's addressed to President Nixon. And it says very plainly, Air America is, and I quote, proprietary activity of the CIA, unquote. Yep. We have the paper proof. I don't think you guys think Craig and I are making this up or it's speculative. It absolutely isn't. Further, Kissinger says that Air America pilots have a vast knowledge of the terrain of Laos, which is of critical importance to the success of this operation. You will see that the rest of that memo to this day is redacted in total. I'm guessing that this is about the drugs. I'm guessing that's what it's about. What else could it possibly be about?
Yeah, it would have to be, because once you start peeling that back, you really realize this is how they get their funding.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't do these worldwide operations without having somebody in Congress asking, hey, where's this money going? It's because they're operating under the budget that's, everybody's unwilling to dig into, because it's all black ops things, because it's coming from your local crack dealer.
Right.
It's filtering up the chain to the CIA, who's using it to run some operation somewhere in the world. And that was what they found. They realized that this was such an amazing cash cow and a free money source that, as you're watching these shows that we do, you're going to start realizing government doesn't care if people die. They really don't. It's like, you feel like it's an important thing. Like, man, why could you what do they care if one pilot is killed in an operation, or if crackhead dies? They don't care, because what it does is we're furthering freedom through this money. And that's how these people rationalize this stuff, that it just ends justify the means. And to a lot of us, we're like, oh my God, that's abhorrent. They don't see it that way. They see it as a patriotic act of moving these drugs.
Right. And always we can reference back. So our very first Sinister Mysteries was MK Ultra, where these guys were saying, look, we don't abide by the UN rules of medical testing. We don't adopt everything that was learned from what the Germans did and what the Japanese did, which was another one of our episodes. Then you could jump forward to Sinister Mysteries 8, when we were talking about Leo Ryan, the congressman. When a congressman starts asking too many questions or tries to put forth an amendment, the Ryan Hughes amendment, saying the CIA needs to tell our committees what the hell they're doing, they get shot. They get shot on an airfield in a foreign country.
It just happens to be somewhere in South America, which happens to be pretty close to somebody that's also friendly with the CIA. And, I mean, I said, it's really crazy. I mean, for us picking random topics, how these things are they're all starting to lock in. It's pretty cool. Yeah. It's pretty cool.
I have a feeling we might get a little less random, but I think also spinning the cylinder and seeing what loads is going to be interesting.
That'd be awesome.
I agree. There's some fun to it. So the secret war in Laos. Laos was really a place we weren't supposed to be. The 1954 Geneva Conference had forced the neutral status of Laos after the First Indochina War, prohibiting U.S. involvement. So this would have been a big effing deal if this got outed. So they're delivering Thai artillery. Again, it's amazing. Weapons are coming from everywhere, right? I'm thinking like Iran-Contra is just another extension of all of this,
Mm-hmm.
right? All of our dealings with Gaddafi, right?
Yep.
People like Noriega in Panama. We
Yeah,
had
exactly.
crazy deals with Noriega. He was involved with the Condor things and all of that until he screwed the pooch and wanted to keep the Panama Canal for himself.
And then that's when,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's all of a sudden he's got to be dealt with. So clever always the CIA with their nicknames and all. They're doing rice drops, which is real rice getting put to, I mean, South Vietnamese troops lasted as long as they did, in part because of these Air America rice drops. But then they had something called hard rice drops, and that's what they called the weapons deliveries to the Hmong insurgents. This became big money. Money is starting to flow. And then you talked about Pathet Lao. So they're being supported by the Soviet Union. So there becomes this balance of scales. Oh, if the Soviet Union's doing it to this level, Kennedy says, oh, we got to do it to this level too. And this is how this global game gets played. So Kennedy approves a plan in a place where we're not supposed to be, a secret army of 20,000 Hmong insurgents, all supported, trained, funded, and equipped by our CIA. Where do you get the money from Congress to support 20,000 troops? That's
where you get into this thing. Now, before we get too much further, I was going to ask you, do you think this is one of the first iterations of a Cold War battle? Right there, like the plane of jars, because now we're literally America is versus communist China, Russia. You know, we're battling we're through not literally our blood either way. We're using the surrogates, and that's what I was wondering. I was wanting to ask you, I'm like anybody that's got more of like a history connection like this too, let me know if that's thing. But this seems like this is one of the first uses of other nations, other individuals as our pawns in a battle against this thing, because we're literally using, I mean, Bay of Pigs, that was a direct action by us.
Yeah, I believe that it is, because having played Che Guevara, having played Allen Ginsberg, going back through all of that was happening in the late 50s into the 60s, these are the geopolitical chess pieces. This is Che talking to the UN. This is Cuba getting kicked out of the Organization of American States, which Che says it's just, President Jefe over there doing his thing. And this is illegitimate. So they go, okay, you're done. You're out. Khrushchev is moving pieces all over the board. So to me, yeah, I mean, post-Korea, Charles said it too, the Cold War starts to ramp up. There's already weird feelings between Stalin and FDR and Churchill. None of them trust each other. There's the Marshall Plan and all of this. But this, to me, the Vietnam War, 50s through the 60s, this is where it's really kicking.
Yeah, because like for Charles, because my criteria for that is I'm not talking about like a puppet administration where we're funding. This is one where literally you have the China communism funding one side, we're funding the other side, and these two sides are literally battling each other.
Yeah.
As I said, where the other ones, it's like we want this regime, so we kind of give them supplies. I don't know if Russia, like during Operation Condor, I don't know if Russia and China were funding the other side. I don't know. I mean, they could have been.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I would assume that they were, because that's what the KGB versus CIA was. Oh, they're doing this. We got to do this. Now we're doing this, and they got to do that. So it's around this time now that it becomes air opium, and you talked a lot about the plane of jars and all. The one thing is, though, that this opium trade in this area was the main source of funding in country for the Hmong insurgents. So the U.S. had to open this back up. They had to, or else this 20,000 strong army is done. Now, here's what becomes interesting. Air America delivers raw opium. They take it to a military headquarters. At the military headquarters, they process it into something called high-grade number 4 heroin, and then the Air America takes it and they deliver it to Manila. They deliver it to Bangkok. They deliver it to Saigon, which means, Craig, the heroin that was going in the arms of U.S. soldiers in these places was being delivered by
Military.
the CIA, our people.
Yeah.
So not only are they putting drugs on the streets of America for the next many decades, but they're fulfilling the supply of our own soldiers, many of which who came home, addicts.
Oh yeah,
it's disgusting.
Well, and that's and that's where, I mean, like I said, I don't want to jump ahead here. I mean, because this is kind of where we end up with like the Medellin, cartels and stuff out of there. I mean, for people like, Pablo Escobar, I mean, it's for anybody that's not, that's not aware of what's going on, I want to say he's currently still, I'm trying to remember where he's at right now. Because he's still alive, if I'm not mistaken.
I think he finally got taken down, right? Isn't he in prison somewhere?
He's in prison, but I was like, I want to say he's still alive. I want to say is he in the Midwest? I can't remember if he's alive or dead right now. I'm trying to see if I could find something here. I think he's still alive, but this is the late 70s and early 80s is when he comes into play, and this is around the same thing, Colombia. So we have the same area, where you have the congressman killed, from Jonestown. You've got the same area, you could start seeing the pieces moving in here, and that's where it's fun. We don't have enough time to just go into all the little nuances.
We're doing okay. We have some time because I want to say it's no wonder they make movies about this stuff.
Yeah.
At this time that the heroin is being refined, going to Manila, Bangkok, and Saigon, the Corsican mafia is involved. And the Corsican mafia is handling this heroin trade. They're in the pocket of the brother of the president of South Vietnam, who also happens to be the head of the secret police. So the U.S. Embassy in Saigon, the money dries up, the pipeline's dropping, and so all these people are teaming up. The brother of the South Vietnamese president, the Corsican mafia, the secret police, the U.S. CIA, they're all in bed together going, this stuff has to get where it's going. So as the CIA does, these guys all learn from each other. We talked about this in Operation Condor. So Air America starts flying for Laotian drug lords. I mean, that's the real precursor to Pablo Escobar.
Yeah, because his operations were in the Americas, Europe, Asia, Africa, Oceania. So you can see right there, this is where he starts getting the ideas of how to do this. And then the CIA starts seeing, because now the late 70s, early 80s, cocaine suddenly becomes the Hollywood drug, becomes the popular one. Not so much heroin. Heroin is still kind of like the dirty, seedy drug. That's not something most people aren't wanting to go in a party and see somebody with a thing strapped and injected in their arm. The guy that goes to the bathroom real quick and comes back out and is the life of the party. That's it. So the CIA and these cartels, they see this opportunity. He learns how to do it from Air America. He starts seeing these things, how to do these things. He takes his operation there and starts expanding. And so now it's the same thing. Everything's denied. Remember that everything's officially denied, but you can see he has the connections through these Asian contacts, through this stuff, and he branches out, and you can start seeing where these things, they all start interconnecting between the people. And it's, even though, a lot of people, conspiracy theory, once again, when things keep overlapping, eventually something, you have to just take note that when Kissinger keeps showing up in all these things, probably not an upstanding dude. He's involved in all these things. Is that a conspiracy theory? Yes, because nothing's official. But it's what are you going to say? I mean, he literally, the memo that Joey just read, I mean, it literally spells these things out. So obviously, there's got to be something to it. I mean, why was Escobar taken out? Probably he wanted a bigger piece for himself, and he had to be the sacrifice to keep everybody in line make sure everybody stayed on the program.
Right. They push these things as far as they can, just with Operation Condor. Why did that end? Because someone got greedy and took out someone in Washington, D.C. And they're like, oh, hell no, you broke the rules. You have to be. Now, word started to get around. Journalists were starting to dig. Allen Ginsberg was screaming from the top of his lungs about the Golden Triangle, and these drugs were coming in and they were destroying everything. This is where they were coming from. He was not a hard drugs kind of guy, Ginsberg, and everybody's telling him, shut up, you're wrong, you're a crazy man. Then the story breaks in the New York Times. They publish an apology to Ginsberg, and Ginsberg is chasing down Richard Helms, the head of the CIA, asking for an apology. And of course, Helms is totally ignoring him. So that's where it ended. It ended because it had to. It ended on paper with a mea culpa. 1974, very convenient because, hey, man, Vietnam War's over anyway. Craig, how many of these things we've seen end not because they were wrong, because a chapter closes and another chapter's opening up. So it's a nice time for a reinvention, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And that, it's, do we want to jump to like guys like Barry Seal and stuff now? Or do you want to keep going on with something?
No, I think that we could, because that's really the end, right? So they have this fleet of planes. They have all these logistics. They have the pilots. And my understanding is that Barry Seal, as he was being funded, started to acquire some of the old, plane lists from the old airplane inventory from Air America.
Which, if all that is, in fact correct, that also further solidifies the fact that he was tied to this operation as opposed to just somebody random, because it's just, how do you go from being a TWA pilot to suddenly a major drug smuggler in the air using former drug smuggling equipment from Air America? I mean, that doesn't just happen. I mean, they don't just have a early version of Craigslist where you find, planes for sale. I mean, they get these connections, and him, along with, I wish I could remember, the best way to how to say his name. Frederick Rick. I don't know. It's Luytjes. I can't remember how.
Goodness.
Yeah, I don't know if it's.
That's good.
Lutz,
that's right. Who was this cat?
Yeah. So these guys in the 70s and 80s became this is the crackdown. Reagan comes on, this is a major focus, the war on drugs. We're doing these things. Well, it's kind of funny that here's President Reagan saying this is a major focus on ours. Well, meanwhile, behind him, the CIA director is directly involved in running drugs through the operations of that President Reagan is saying we must fight against. So that's one of the first times, I think, on air, right on camera, where you actually see what is now referred to as the shadow government.
Yeah.
And the thing is behind, the government within the government. And these guys, like this Frederick guy, he was brilliant. Everybody, the DEA and everybody was focused on Florida. That was like their major entry point for all these South American cartels. Well, he was flying out of Scranton, Pennsylvania. Yeah. He was taking, and he was bringing stuff up into the Northeast. So they couldn't figure out where all the stuff was coming from. And these guys came out through a roundabout way. They watched, like his story is he was just watching, like he'd do these flights. We kept seeing the guys coming in with the big old flashy shirts, gold chains, chest hair hanging out, living the South Beach lifestyle. And he started realizing these guys that he was flying were actually making, more money than he could fathom. And so he decided to get into this thing. And by the time they're done, I mean, I want to say it was 10 tons of cocaine or something like that he was involved in flying. I mean,
Barry Seal was the guy.
Yeah. He's the same thing. It's just, it's just a crazy amount of, we'll just use the term product that these guys smuggled in for the cartels.
Yeah.
And you can see I think it was the Ochoa family that, he was involved in too. I mean, he's in both of them. I mean, he was, like I said, he was assassinated. Frederick, he's in the witness protection program.
Mm-hmm.
And so once again, he's still valuable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Barry knew too much. And that's why I
Yeah.
said, because he knew the Air America side, he actually was more, I think he was more connected. I think because Frederick, he ended up using the term Air America for his flights. He actually, because the CIA quit using it, I want to say it was 1976.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was the date. And so his operation started not too long after that. And he started, using the term Air America. And I think Barry Seal also used the term as well.
Yeah. And he got some of his inventory from it. And I think that's some of the confusion. But in the 80s, in his heyday, Barry Seal was depositing $50,000 a day into his freaking bank account, or a week.
Yeah.
$50,000 a week. That was his take after expenses and all. Yeah, it was pretty crazy. When, guys, if you watch, we're gonna watch it this weekend because it's a great film.
Mm-hmm.
It's called American Made. It was only made in 2017, so this stuff is cropping up again. He was a TWA pilot, but the story goes the way they concoct it, right? And I'm a screenwriter, so I understand why they do this crap. But that he was a hot dog, and so TWA cuts him loose, but the CIA hears about his reputation. It also becomes, because Hollywood funds these things, and you're talking about Tom Cruise, and you're talking about major production companies and a lot of money and a lot of stakes, because you don't want to say, here's a guy who got his pilot license when he was 15, flew Civil Air Patrol, knew Lee Harvey Oswald, which probably means that he knew David Ferry. David Ferry was a pilot too.
Yep.
Then got a little taste of Air America. Then he goes flying for TWA, and that's friggin' boring. Doing domestic routes back and forth. And so he probably put the word out and said, hey, guys, I'm game if you got anything cooking. And that's how it happened. That's a much different movie. That's a movie that Hollywood doesn't want to make.
Yeah, because and he was arrested in a conspiracy for shipping C4.
Yeah.
Plastic explosives to Mexico using a DC-4. Kind of ironic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was dismissed, for prosecutorial misconduct, which, go figure, that you got to make sure these things. But yeah, so that's where like his TWA thing. So it wasn't quite as good as a hot dog, a hothead that had to be released from the same. But like you said, that's Hollywood.
Yeah, and it sometimes you have to sometimes you want to change the story, and sometimes it's prudent to change the story, because when you're telling stories about the CIA and all, they take an interest in that when you're Tom Cruise and it's that kind of money, and they know people are going to see this movie. Guys, I just dropped a URL. If you want to get the story of Air America from the Air America pilots, their organization is air-america.org. That's where you'll get their perspective, which I think is really important to get.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do too. And it's one of those, we've said it several times during the show. CIA officially denies all of this, that this ever occurred, even though you have good documentation that clearly states that they were involved in these things. So so you have to take it with that. But a lot of it, there is a lot of speculation on their involvement. But once again, when you start doing the pieces, you see that people clearly learned from the CIA's operations. They clearly took these things, and people in government certainly turned a blind eye to a lot of this stuff, because, like I said, with the power that the U.S. has over this area, there's no way billions of dollars of stuff is moved back and forth across borders without somebody, just simply doing the whole, thing. I mean, there's no way. There's absolutely no way. I mean, we should be able to shut this down instantly. It would just be little mom and pop operations that we'd have to be going after.
It's been 40 years, so I'm going to say this. So I talked about my dad a little tonight. I'm going to say this as well. I was a young guy working at a restaurant in the Jersey Shore. It was the mid 1980s. I'm a teenager. kind of living the life. It was very cool. We were hanging out late one night, and I was a huge Miami Vice fan, right? Michael Mann's, Don Johnson, all about the DEA in Miami and the whole drug trade and all that. And I meet a guy who's a DEA agent in Miami at the time. He was best friends with the owner of the restaurant, his son. And we're sitting having drinks one night and lips get loose or whatever. And he says, you know what, guys? It's a rigged game. He's like, it's a rigged game. We get some wins. We collect a lot of contraband, which keeps us funded and keeps us going. So as long as we're collecting the boats and the goodies and the gold and all that kind of stuff and pounding some stuff, they let us go on, but it's a rigged game. And he was talking about guys. He was talking about guys like Barry Seal without talking about them.
Oh yeah,
the timing was right.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, they just busted. I think they just found a submersible not too long ago that had a whole bunch of I think it was a whole bunch of cocaine on it, and two guys that died. I mean, so it's still going on. I mean, it's one of those things. Here's a loss here, but it's, I think, while everybody's focused here, more is just coming in on these other areas. It's crazy.
Yeah,
that was a cool freeze frame. It just froze for a second on the thing. It was like,
yeah. And Joanne, yeah, thank you for your comment. That's what we're trying to do. It seems like the time is right. People want to hear this stuff. Craig, one of your compadres who's on the show a lot, Tom, he talks all the time about how everybody laughed at conspiracy theorists, and now nobody's laughing anymore.
Yeah.
I think
we're basically standing there like.
Yeah, I think if you're saying JFK Jr. still alive and he's leading this revolt and they're gonna blah 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 blah.
I don't think we're on the QAnon side, where you're okay to state that you're a QAnon supporter. I don't think we're there yet.
No. And again, when you're talking about declassified or Freedom of Information Act documents, like we try to, as much as possible, that February 1970 document exists where Kissinger says on White House letterhead, these guys are indispensable. They know the terrain. This is a CIA operation. We have to do what we can to help them. And then it goes black. And that was, so here's what we need to do. There's a real opportunity to move this product. And then, like you said, Craig, what a brilliant image. I think I want to end on that. You got Reagan there. You got Nancy, who's Just Say No, right? That was the first big anti-drug campaign. And he's got a guy behind him who's putting it on the streets.
Yep. Yeah. It's a literal yin and yang thing. There's just a position. I mean, you couldn't script it better as a movie. You literally got the very entity you're saying, that.
Yeah. And then I think that the other thing that I want to say about that is that was the roots of the prison industrial complex, which also became a great funding source, right? And then you could play with redistricting, and then you can play with who can vote and who can't vote. And, you had John Sinclair and 5 for 2 and, John Lennon getting involved. And it's
a great destabilization, tool. Yeah. I mean, you can literally divide and conquer with the simple, a simple little white powder that comes out of, South America. You can cause so much chaos. I mean, like I said, you got people in prison, you got families destroyed. Mission accomplished.
Yeah. So, sir, this is a privilege to do this with you every couple of weeks.
Yeah, it is. I enjoy it.
So I'm going to look at my notes here. We have 2 cults coming up. We're going to look at Nexium, and we're going to look at the Manson family. We're going to look at them in detail. I don't want to give you the date for that because I need to talk with Craig about some stuff. And then I got TBD. So we're going to decide on some really cool topics. Craig, I have one to pitch to you. I hope you have one to pitch to me. Awesome. And so we're going to let you guys, here, let's end on a comment from one of our viewers. Can you imagine when they investigate the Chinese mafia and rig votes? Yeah.
Oh yeah. No,
this is all getting weird.
Yeah, it's across the board. It's like things are getting crazy.
Yeah, well, hey, look, we didn't talk about this on air yet, China brokers the biggest peace deal, right?
Mhm.
Iraq and Saudi, or Iran and Saudi Arabia, biggest peace deal in 70 years. China's going, hey, we'll broker a deal with Ukraine. We'll be the guys. So the sands are shifting. Our banks,
Shia and Sunni.
failing.
I mean, these are warring. They don't get along, and so
yeah. So
So I mean,
that's a big.
that was a geopolitical move for sure.
Yeah, if everybody decides, hey, look, the U.S. isn't our guy anymore. Their time has come. The price has been too high. Like I said, the banks are failing. Craig, did you know? I sent you a video. Did you know that there was a congressman from North Carolina posted a video because Congress got called to a Zoom meeting at 2:30 in the morning,
that one. Yeah.
EST, to talk about the bank crisis and go, we got to get this shit under control now. At the same time that all of a sudden Congress is going, oh no, a certain something could have come out of a certain lab in a certain country. So we're in a different kind of Cold War now.
Yeah, and
let's hope
we got some cool topics coming up.
Yeah, we sure do. So everyone, peace. Thank you so much for staying with us. We're having fun. 11 of these babies already.
I know.
All right. Good night,
All right, everybody. Have a good night.